Yeah, but before we start, I got to turn on everything.
Good evening, everybody. If you've got an empty seat next to you and you're willing to shift over or raise your hand up so that those that are just coming in can find where that seat is, we'd really appreciate it. There's one in this third row here. Do we want to move? We can offer them. It looks like some are they're ready to take some seats. Should we?
I moved her down because
There's one seat down here in the third row. There's a hand that's up over here. And there are a few seats in this very front row that we can go ahead and have filled in. We can have you sitting on the stairs, so if there aren't any seats, we do have an overflow room down here, right down the hallway. So if there are no more seats, we do have an overflow seat. There's still one in the third row here. There's one like 5 rows up, or 2 it looks like. Is that an empty seat? No? That one's taken, okay. No, my stuff's over there, and I don't have to sit, I can stand here. Here.
Hey, I got it.
You sit there, Deb, for me.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. We're going to get started. All right. Hello, welcome to Seminole State College. For those of you who are guests, welcome students. Before I get to introducing our featured guest speaker tonight, Paul Rosalie, I wanted to make sure to thank a couple of people who made this event possible. You can stand in here. We received financial support from several groups in the college that made this event possible, so I'd like to thank the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning under the direction of Barbara LaBranch. Thank you. I would like to thank the Wells Fargo STEM grant under the direction of Maya Byfield. She's somewhere out there. There she is. Thank you, Maya. And we also got financial support from SASF funds via the Environmental Initiative Club led by Dr. Debbie Saki, so thanks very much. And then lastly, we got support from the Center for Global Engagement led by Annalise Bush and Barb Pruka, and I'm not sure if they're here. Anyways, thank you anyhow. Okay. Also want to take a moment to thank a couple groups at the college who also made this possible. So like marketing events, the media department, maintenance, facilities, custodial all helped to make this possible. So I want to thank them as well for their support. Thanks. All right, on to the main event. All right, so Paul Rosalie has lived and worked in some of the wildest places on earth, including the Peruvian Amazon rainforest and the forests of India. He has currently written 2 books, including his autobiography, Mother of God, and his most recent book, The Girl and the Tiger. The Girl and the Tiger is a fiction book, takes place in India. It was released just this past September and has received high praise and good reviews from various groups. Paul continues to work to conserve these wild places and be a voice for the forests and the animals that live there. The man you're about to meet has wrestled anacondas, grabbed caiman with his bare hands, and explored uncharted regions of the Amazon. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Paul Rosalie.
Hello. Thank you guys for coming out. It's so good to be back. I am going to do my best to squeeze everything in into the 1 hour. I have to go this way. Okay. Can you guys see okay? You can see the slide? Okay. Yes! Yes! All right, I will dive right in. We're going to be covering the Amazon and India because these are 2 places where I feel like it's the battle is playing out of where to protect wildlife and our ecosystems and some of the most important stories of our time. But to start at the beginning and give a little bit of context to this, see, if you can see this, it's a picture of a river and really jungle and nothing else. When I was a kid, I was born in Brooklyn, I grew up in New York City, I never felt, that's so much better. You don't need to see me, you need to see the jungle. 10 points. But I grew up not in the jungle, and my whole life I remember my parents taking me to the zoo or reading me books and hearing about gorillas going extinct and Galapagos tortoises going extinct and the rainforest coming down, and so I grew up with this tension, this sort of like environmental guilt of not only do I want to protect these things, but also I wanted to go see them before they were gone. And I was never good in school at all. So when I was about 17, I dropped out of high school, I got my GED, and I went straight into college. And my dream was to go see the Amazon rainforest and to work in the Amazon rainforest. And of course, when I got to college, I said to the first professor, the first bio professor, I said, is there any way that I can go to the rainforest? And he said, no. And I said, okay. And he said, when you're doing your graduate school work, he goes, then you can go to the field. And I said, okay. So then I wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I went to the next person and asked them, no, no, no. And everybody kept telling me no. And of course, my parents said no. My parents said, you're 17, you're not leaving, you're not going to another country and going into the jungle. So what I had to do was get a plane ticket and find a research project and go to the jungle with people that were doing work down there. And I'm telling you this because so many people today and in life in general have been talking about, how did you find this career? And not only how did you find this career, but also just how do you follow the path that you want to follow to get the position you want to get. Now, when I first went to the Amazon, the thing that indicated where I would go, when I looked at the world's map, I knew I wanted to go to the rainforest. But when you look at the world, that's the Amazon. And this map is coded for vertebrate diversity. So this is the Amazon there with that deep blood red, where the Andes Mountains meets the Amazon. That's more life, more plant and animal species than anywhere else on Earth. Not just now, but in the entire fossil record. So this was the place that I wanted to go. So I got a plane ticket to there. And when you show up in the Amazon, well, first of all, I'll proceed that with saying that one of the things that changed my life was this. And I remember a few years ago this came out in the news where they said, we just got the report from WWF, and they said 50% of the wildlife on our planet has been lost. Not 50% of the species, but 50% of the numbers of wildlife. There's 50% less wild animals on Earth than there was 50 years ago. And when I heard this, I thought, this is it. I thought newscasters are going to take out their earpieces. I thought cars are going to stop in the street. I thought this was like a major turning point. And of course, the next day, that couldn't have been more wrong because everything just continued as it is. Now, in that blood red section of the West Amazon, you have more plants and animals than anywhere else. That means record numbers of birds, reptiles, and amphibians. This is not going to work. What's not? Oh, but you won't be able to see the slides. Try it. You guys have to vote. You have to say yes or no. Give the people what they want.
Jamie, but probably looks in the other side. Yeah, we have another room with participants there.
They can't see me or they can't see the slides? They can see the slides. Nothing. Huh.
With the last one is here.
Very strange. Keep going? Okay. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to keep going. So as I was saying, the West Amazon, you're talking about more life than anywhere else. You're talking about record numbers of reptiles and amphibians, of birds, of plants and animals. But when I went to the Amazon, there was one thing more than anything else that I was thinking about, and that is these guys. Now, when I went to the Amazon, I went as a research volunteer, basically. I was a kid, I had no qualifications, and I went and I met with this local guy who was running a conservation project where, now this is a person who, all of his brothers were loggers and gold miners and farmers, so they were a family really that made their living out of the jungle. And this guy, JJ, had grown up in the forest. This is JJ, and this is me. Now, JJ grew up in the forest. He grew up walking barefoot, hunting, using saps from the trees. We always, there used to be an Apple ad. They used to say, oh, there's an app for that. Whatever ailment you have in the Amazon, there's a sap for that. Now, when I went, I didn't know anything about the jungle, and as these guys started taking me in and teaching me things, they were teaching me about those medicinal saps. They were teaching me about how to track wildlife, about how to read the weather, all these things. There was only one thing that I could reciprocate that with, and that was that I knew snakes. And I knew snakes from rescuing snakes from people up in the Northeast, where so many times I've seen people trying to kill like a water snake saying it's a water moccasin. And so I grew up always trying to protect snakes, and these guys are terrified of the anacondas. They're terrified of so many of the small tree snakes. And so as I was teaching them how to handle, they said, well, we got to go after anacondas, right? And I said, yes. And so we got this fascination with anacondas because that was part of our exchange, where they were teaching me the jungle and I was teaching them snakes. And so this was the first big one that we caught, or at least we thought it was big. We came back from like a week-long expedition. We were all dirty and we were all haggard, and we came back and we had this photo, and we went back to the camp and we showed JJ's father, who was about 85 years old. We showed him this picture, and we thought we were heroes. We were like, we just caught the biggest snake ever. It was so incredible. And he just shook his head and he was like, this is an anacondita. He was like, this is the smallest thing I've ever seen. He was like, you guys think you're men? And he started really going on us. And he was like, if you want to see anacondas, he's like, if you really think you're something, he goes, you'll go to the floating forest. And so he told us to go to the floating forest, and JJ had never been there. This is, from my field notes, this is the best representation I could do, because you can't really get a photo of this thing. If you take a photo of it, it just looks like a strange field, but actually this laser pointer is good. So here you have the lake. This is supposed to be me, okay? You have the edge of this lake that goes down very steep, and it's a very deep lake, and it's filled with all kinds of logs and detritus and all the cast-offs of the forest going in. And then floating on the top of the water, you have all this vegetation, this grass that's all matted together, and then growing out of the grass are these smaller trees. And so when we got to this place, on the first night we went there, and again, this was a place that they told us, you don't go here. People go here and they disappear. There's anacondas that will eat you here. So there's all these local legends. And when we got there, everybody else we were with turned back. We were there, and it was probably about 9 o'clock at night when we started in. And as you move across the floating forest, you see these big tracks as you go, places where the grass has been pushed down. And they were telling me, they were going, this is anaconda, this is anaconda. And I said, there's no way that's anaconda because these tracks are this big. I said, there's no way there's a snake this big. So I didn't believe it the whole night. And sure enough, that same night, that first night, at about 2 a.m., JJ stops and all the color goes out of his face. And there's a 25-foot, which you're talking about a record-breaking snake. And I have one measurement of this snake that's certain, and that is that I couldn't get my arms around it. So when I saw this, I said, if we get this snake, that's the front cover of National Geographic, 100%. And I got my measurement because I jumped on her back. And I jumped on the snake's back, and she started moving, and it was like a fly landing on my back. Like, I did nothing. I didn't stop her. She just kept going, and I was riding this snake, thinking about how easily she could turn around and just destroy me, but she didn't. She just went into the water, and eventually I had to make a choice. Do I go down with the snake into the water, or do I let go? I let go. But when I tell that story, nobody believes me. And here's the thing. I'm coming at this. I'm telling you about how we go out, how we find these crazy snakes. What I wanted to do, my dream, was to get the attention, get the funding, to tell people about how these apex predators are regulating ecosystems. And what's better than the anaconda for doing that? And so when I had a story like this, the problem is, here you have a 20-year-old kid that claims to have ridden a world record-size anaconda, and nobody believed me. Now, a few years later, the shirt I'm wearing and the company that collaborates with Seminole and the study abroad and everything, Tamandua Expeditions, is the company that JJ and I started. When we weren't anaconda hunting, we started bringing people from all over the world to the jungle. And what that did was allow JJ and all these other people that would be loggers or gold miners to be cooks, boat drivers, all this stuff. So we started to be able to share the jungle with people. And as we caught these anacondas, we got known for being the anaconda guys. Anaconderos, they called us. And then we had this time where we had a 5-week expedition, and this girl had come because she'd heard all the crazy stories, and she wanted to study anacondas. And she came. It was a 5-week-long expedition, and this girl came because she thought I was the anaconda man. And after 4.5 weeks, we had found no anacondas. I can't tell you what that does to you when somebody travels across the world and saves up for their dream, and then you give them nothing. I felt terrible. So we were at the floating forest, and this was a few years after the first time, after that first night. So I knew the big one was around. And I had a group there, which I was the only guide out that day, which made me a little bit nervous. But I let the group out. And so there was this girl who was obsessed with finding an anaconda, and also in the group was this very tough demolitions expert, special forces from Finland. And for the entire 4.5 weeks, I hadn't seen him be scared of anything. And so we went out, and we had searched the whole floating forest. We canvassed this thing. We saw all the tracks. And we started realizing that what happens is that the snakes go down. The reason they go on that floating vegetation is because they can bask in the sun, and then if anything comes that threatens them, they go straight down, and they're safe. They have the strategic advantage. And we humans, as we walk on the floating forest, you fall in, you go up to your neck, you grab onto a little tree, and you get stung in the face by bees. It's just like fortified to protect the anacondas. So anyway, we'd spent 4.5 weeks out in the jungle. We'd spent hours and hours on the floating forest. And everybody came back in. We all, we took a count of the group, and this girl looked so sad. And I was like, guys, it's time to go. We got to go. We're just not going to get any anacondas this year. And by the way, by this point, we actually had National Geographic on the line. They were like, if you can show us these big snakes, we'll send a crew. So like, it had been years of searching for these anacondas, and we had nothing. And so this girl, though, she said, she goes, I don't want to leave. She goes, well, you have to let us go out one more time. She goes, let us each go out alone, which is a terrible idea. So I said yes to it, because I like terrible ideas. And so we sent people out in each direction. The girl went to the right, a bunch of other people went this way, and then tough Finnish guy, Jonas, who became a good friend later on, he went to the left. And I was staying where I was because I was tired, and I was hungry, and I was sick of it. And I'd also been stung by everything that day. But I was standing there, and all of a sudden I hear Jonas, and I can't see him anymore, but I hear this, like when you hear someone screaming, you can hear there's something different in their voice, and he goes, Paul! And I'm standing on a floating forest, and I have no idea where anybody else is, so right away I'm terrified. And I go, what is it? And he goes, there's something here! And I'm going, what is it? And he goes, I don't know! And now this is just making me more mad, because I'm like, it's either a snake or it's not. So I start walking through the floating forest and again, dunked up into my neck and then fall over and get hit with something. And when I get next to this kid, he's standing there and he turns to me and his face is like green, just unnatural. And next to him, in front of him, is about a 22-foot jet black anaconda dead asleep. So right away, my mind is back. I'm like, now we have the experience. We also have a whole team here, and snakes don't have ears, so we can actually call everybody. So I'm like, we got a big snake! I scream to everybody, and I'm like, all right, dude, listen, this is the thing. We got to stay super still. And as we're standing there, the snake all of a sudden just flicks her tongue, which means she woke up and she knew we were there. So I'm going through the plan, and we're waiting for the team to come. And this is the thing. Like I said, I rode that snake. No one believes me. Jonas was standing there as this snake, if you've ever seen a crocodile flex when they just thrash to be like, get back. This snake did that, and both of us fell backwards. And I'm like, dude, you have to be careful. I'm going to go for the head. And he goes, I trust you! And just goes, and I got to watch a Finnish dude ride a snake. So there's two people that I know of on Earth that have ridden on snakes. One of them's Finnish, and one of them's from Brooklyn. We don't have any photographic evidence from that day, but everybody showed up behind us, and we all tried to grab this snake, and because we were on floating vegetation, she pulled us down until the point where we had to make the same decision. Either hold on and be taken under, or let go and continue being able to breathe. But this is what I drew in my journal. And then the problem is that no one believed this photo. And so we kept going, and a few years later, we actually got there. And this is a world record-breaking snake. This is the largest live captured wild anaconda that's verifiably measured, 18.6 feet long and over 220 pounds. And she had a totally empty stomach. Now, that's me in the front. That's JJ. This is Mosin, who's an incredible wildlife photographer. This is Lee, who runs Tamandua with me. Jonas, who rode the snake. And that's my wife, G, in the back. We named the snake Eleanor after my grandmother, which she did not like. But what we started realizing was that these snakes were so big and so intimidating looking that it really sort of grabbed people's attention. And what we started doing was telling the story of the forest through anacondas. If you can see it, I mean, her head is kind of almost the size of like a Rottweiler's head. But what we did was we tried to make documentaries. We tried to put out as much photos as possible and bring people into why are these snakes important. So in the Amazon, when you want to go gold mining, there's not just nuggets of gold in rock. You actually have to cut down the forest to access the clay. And then in the clay, the gold is actually just particles like sand. So you have to suck up the clay, filter it out, and then you have to use mercury to bind the gold out of the sediment. So in order to get to gold in the Amazon, you have to cut down the forest, destroy everything, and then use mercury, which basically pollutes what's left. So all that forest over there should be over here too, but we've lost 350,000 acres to gold mining in the Amazon, just in the Peruvian Amazon. And this is all just because of unregulated gold mining. And so what does that have to do with anacondas? It's that as this gold mining runoff goes into the rivers, that bioaccumulates in the ecosystem. So the people in Peru have way higher than normal levels of mercury. We're starting to see birth defects in the people. And you say, okay, so that's in the humans, but then think about the Amazon ecosystem. You're talking about a biome bigger than the continental US. So if this is leaching into that system and flowing across the rivers, because everything that happens in the West Amazon flows out across the rest of the basin, 4,000 miles. So the accumulated effect of that pollution, what is that having on one of the world's most important systems? So if it's going into the fish and going up into the birds and into the caiman and the mammals, and then the anaconda is the queen of the Amazon. That's the top of the riverine food chain. And so looking at the anacondas and taking skin samples from them and trying to understand, I mean, we're seeing a sharp decline in anacondas. And that's partly because people hunt them because they're scared of them. And that could also be because mercury is damaging them while they're developing in the womb. So we're trying to understand where anacondas are going, why we're seeing less big ones, and how that's affecting the ecosystem. So all of that, that started with us going out and just catching big snakes because we thought it was exciting, has turned into a very serious study of apex predators and how they affect our most important ecosystems. Now this is the Las Piedras River, and you can see this road. And people always ask me, they're like, what is it that's killing the rainforest? And I just say, roads. This road showed up in this picture. This should be, well, this is not actually 2019. This picture is from about 2009. And in the next slide, you see what happened. Once you cut a road, then you get all that deforestation. So like, again, before, you have all this forest and nobody's there. And then right after, just 2 years later, you have all this deforestation. Now, how many people heard about the Amazon fires this year? Pretty much everybody, thank God. But the thing is, every year the Amazon burns, and every year I'm down there and we film it, and the locals look at me, they're like, why is this crazy gringo walking in the fire? And they're all like, yo, get out. But I've been trying to put together years and years of burning forest videos. And this year, because the fires blew over Sao Paulo, Brazil, and people uploaded it to social media, and the whole world got scared that it was doomsday, for 1 week the Amazon got attention. And so we're hoping that next year when the Amazon burns again, that we can try and generate a similar thing, that we can get to that later, but that's what we need your help for. We need to keep talking about these things. We need to keep pressure up that people are thinking about things like the Amazon burning. You know, and we're going to leave the Amazon for a second and go to India, but what you're going to notice is that through the work that we do with JJ and with the local community, and working with the Seminole study abroad and all the students that come down and the professors and the effort that comes in, we are getting to the jungle and we're actually trying to do something about it. So the people that would be cutting down burning forests to make their crop fields, to do logging, a lot of those guys are helping us do this now. They're driving our boats, they're cooking for us, they're guiding. So one of the things we were talking about today is really just like the huge effect that students and faculty here are having on the Amazon, because it's not like we're just going and we're playing in the jungle and then we're coming back. It's like, no, we're actually working with the local people to make sure that they have an alternative to burning it down or to destroying it through mercury. And so that's one of the best things about being here. Now, all of this, I'm going to just rip you to the other side of the planet and see if you can stay with me, because this is a very different jungle. I think when I was a kid, you watch the Jungle Book. I never thought about where that was. Of course, it was India. It was Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. But here's the thing: in the Amazon, you have jaguars and you have tapirs and you have monkeys and you have mosquitoes. Like when people go, "What is it that's going to kill you in the jungle?" Nothing. In the Amazon, it's nothing. There's not a single animal that's going to attack you that considers you food or really can do anything to you. In the Amazon, the dangers are like falling trees, getting lost or off trail because it's so big that you'll never come back. But India is a totally different story. And And I had never thought about what wildlife India has, and I had a professor in school, and this is, again, study abroad, just taking my life and moving it over here. It was a life-changing moment when I took this guy's class, and he said, I want you to come on my study abroad in India. And I said, man, I work in the Amazon. It's like I work in the wilderness. I said, why would I want to go to a place with 1 billion people? And he said, you should come. He goes, it's important that you understand. You've got to come on my study abroad. And I said, no. Anyway, he came in the next day, and he goes, I got 2 words for you. He goes, tigers and elephants. He goes, India has more tigers and more Asian elephants than anywhere else on earth. And those 2 words, I said, sold to the man with the tigers and the elephants. And I signed up for the study abroad that day. And that was one of the most important things that I ever did. Now, this is a jungle where you have things like peacocks. This is a jungle where you have spectacled cobras. Now, I'm good at handling snakes. I used to say that I'm the best I've seen. He's better. That's Vava Suresh. She's very talented with the snakes. The legendary bearcock. If you've seen this, call your doctor. This is a real animal, and this is the Indian bison called a guar, and they're 7 feet at the shoulder. This is the largest living bovine species, and they look like bodybuilders. And they have that roided out, angry mentality, and they're just the biggest thing in the world. And the thing, like the animal is so much bigger than it is in this image. I mean, it's like a minivan, but taller. And when I saw, I mean, again, I went to India for tigers and elephants, but you don't just get to see this stuff. This was the first big animal I saw. And I remember when I was with a guide, and he showed me a kill. And it was one of these that had been killed by a tiger. And when I saw that the skull of this thing was this tall, half my height, and when you see that the backs of these things, and you say, if a tiger can take that down, what can't a tiger do? And that's very scary when you're on the ground in the forest. And so it led me down this path of, do any of us really understand what a tiger is? And bear with me here. I mean, we know the image. We know that they're beautiful. We know that they're really, really pretty animals. And we know that they're important. But for instance, I never thought of what a tiger is just in terms of size. In the Amazon, we have jaguars, but they're not that big. I mean, they're large cats. But I thought of it, a tiger as something, but I thought of it probably more like this, like a reasonable-sized tiger. When I was at this place, I was getting experience for the girl and the tiger. Again, I find it very difficult to just make things up. You want first-hand experience. What do they smell like? How do they act? How do they treat you? What do they do when you wrestle with them? And so I was interacting with these tigers for the day, and then they brought out a full-grown one. This is a baby. This is only 6 months old. When they brought this guy out, I was scared. And Mohsen, who was taking pictures, he called me over and he goes, I've seen you handle snakes. He goes, I've seen you do all this stuff. He goes, you look terrified. He took like 200 pictures that day, and this was the only one that we could use because I'm about to run away. But this tiger had, you look at how big his neck is versus my neck, his chest, their dinner plate-sized paws. I mean, there's just such incredible animals. Their tongues have teeth on them. They have knives on their hands, they have knives in their mouths, and their tongues even have sharp teeth on them. I mean, they can actually lick the skin off of their prey. And the really crazy thing is that when you actually see the athleticism and the power and the speed of a tiger, and the fact that their back is about up to here, I mean, they're just so much bigger, a whole order of magnitude bigger than what we think they should be like. But aside from their size, sort of the power of a tiger over humans, there's this one story that came out of, it started in Nepal. This was about 1900. And there was this tigress in Nepal, and she, for some reason, now a tiger usually, I've been in the jungle with a tiger, and they don't bother you. A tiger has no reason to go after a human. They have deer, they have their natural prey. In Nepal, this one tiger started eating people, which is very strange. And so if you think a tiger needs about one deer a week, that regulates out to maybe about 2 villagers a week. And so this tiger started going after villagers when she was hungry, and after the first year she'd eaten about 100, and after the second year she'd gone up to about 200. And so in this Nepalese village they hired hunters, and they came in and they brought in the best guys, and they couldn't get her. And so eventually they said, we'll just burn down the whole forest. So they burned down the whole forest, and this tigress was smart. She moved into the next forest, which was over the border in India. And of course, once a year had passed, she'd eaten another 100 people. And this is true. We have it. It was all recorded because these people were missing from the fields, and this was just getting worse and worse. And they brought in these shikari hunters. They brought in British snipers. They brought in everybody that could take down this tiger, and no one could even get eyes on her. That's how smart this tiger was. And the one guy that did get eyes on her, she took one look at him and he threw his gun on the ground, because he was such an experienced hunter. He knew if you shoot a bear and you don't kill it, the bear will run for it. If you shoot a tiger and you don't kill it, that tiger's going to come and finish you. And so he knew that. And so this kept going on, and finally they brought in the expert, this guy named Jim Corbett. And what they did was they organized a huge hunt. And at this point, the people weren't going outside. The crops were rotting in the fields. Like, this was like everything had come to a standstill because everyone was scared of this tiger. So they got all these people together and all these elephants together, and they filled the forest with drum beaters and torch bearers and shooting guns in the air, and they filled the whole forest and basically just swept it. And so she came out to a choke point. And this is Jim Corbett with the tiger. And what they discovered when they got the tiger down, when he finally killed her, was that she was missing all of her front teeth. She was shot when she was a cub, and so she couldn't hunt her natural prey, and that's the reason she had to go after these easy-to-kill little naked monkeys, us. But you look at the size of that tiger and you think of what she did, and how many people and how many elephants and how much effort it took just to take down that one tiger. It makes you think about how powerful this animal is. Now, unfortunately, while most tigers don't bother people, people love bothering tigers. They started doing tiger hunting tourism. This guy put machine guns on his Rolls Royce so he could blow away tigers. So tiger sport became this huge thing. Now, tiger range used to be from, all over the Middle East, up into Russia, down through India, Southeast Asia, China. Used to be much of the world. And that was when there was over 100,000 tigers. And today, those little flecks are where there still could be tigers, not where there necessarily are. So since 1900, we've lost about 97% of our tigers. That's just graphic showing it. So what you have today is you have these refugee tigers, these tigers that don't really have forests to go to anymore. And so they're moving between villages. So you have an island of forest here, and then over there, 20 miles that way, you have another island of forest. Well, if you're a tiger, that means you have to cross towns and villages and roads and parking lots and schools. And in India, that means a lot of people, too. Now this, if you look at the look on her face, this is Kala. Now, Kala fell into a well in central India. And instead of killing her, the villagers called the forest department, and they tranquilized her, and they fit her with a radio collar. And they kept her for about 2 months. You see she kind of injured herself on the forehead and stuff. They kept her for about 2 months so she could recuperate, and when they released her, she taught us so much more than we ever knew about what wild tigers are doing today, because we never knew that as they're migrating, they'll go to the edge of a field and just go under the bushes. And there's farmers working 30 feet over there, and there's a tiger under the bushes. But she's smart enough to wait until dark. And when it gets dark out and the villagers go to bed, she wakes up and she'll go and she'll hike 15, 20 kilometers in a night, poach a goat, poach a dog, but they're managing to survive. She actually showed us that modern tigers can survive through human landscape to make it to the jungle. So this is a real tiger that taught us a lot about modern tiger biology. This is another tigress named Avni, who last year was killed. She was accused of being a man-eater, which is up for debate. She was never proven guilty. But Avni's case showed us how difficult it is, because just like Kala, she was moving between the villages, but then she got killed. So her cubs, we don't know where they are. Now, when you're walking through the Indian jungle, the most influential thing that you noticed right away, because when I got to India, I went out and I thought, I'm going to go exploring. It's going to be like the Amazon. I'll throw on my backpack. I'll bring my hammock. I'm going to go out into the jungle. You cannot do that. You have those giant bison. You have elephants. You have tigers. You have leopards. You have bears, sloth bears. It's a totally different game. It's way more intense. But someone who was warning me about elephants told me once, he said, be careful of the elephants, and he goes, and also respect them, he goes, because there are older siblings. And right away I was like, what do you mean by older siblings? And this guy was saying, he said, think back up 10,000 years. He goes to when there were different species of proboscids all over the world. You had woolly mammoths and mastodons and elephants and all the other species that used to be there. And they're the ones tearing down the forest. They're the ones moving the seeds. They're the ones gardening all these ecosystems that we grew up in as a species. So they're tremendously influential on the way our modern world looks. And so I liked that there are older siblings. But when you see elephants in the wild today, just like the tigers, there's humans cutting through their old maps. And they're supposed to migrate from forest to forest to forest. The thing is, an elephant can't hide under a bush. So the elephants, you just see them out in the daylight. They'll be crossing the road and there's traffic and there's people honking at them. And you can see the stress on the elephants' faces. So the elephants have really drawn the short end of the stick. Now, this boy, one day I was by the river and this kid comes riding in on an elephant, and he's I don't know how old he is. He's like 9 or 10 or 11 years old, but he comes in riding on his elephant smoking a cigarette. And he says a command, and the elephant lifts its leg, and he climbed down, and he starts washing his elephant. And me and my wife went up to him, and we were like, hey man, like, what's the deal with you and the elephant? We're like, where's your parents? And he was like, what are you talking about, parents? And he was like, he's just washing this elephant. And he goes, do you need any logs moved? And we were like, what are you talking about? So him and this elephant walk around South India, and this was an orphaned elephant. Its parents were lost to a road collision or something. And his father, this was a 65-year-old elephant, his father raised the elephant and trained it to work basically as an excavator. If you have a farm and a tree falls over your pathway, this guy will come and lift the tree that no one else can lift and put it over here. So this boy had no parents, but he had this elephant, and they live in the jungle together. Now, I'll back up. So, what's interesting to me about this relationship is that it's sort of a meeting in the middle between the humans and the wild elephants, because you have wild elephants, and then you have this sort of semi-wild thing. So this kid was telling us that when he's not working, this elephant gets to go free in the jungle. But if he wants bananas, he has to come back, and of course the kid will give him bananas and say, all right, let's go, we're going to go do a job, and then he'll let him go back into the jungle. This is the other sort of extreme. This is an actual elephant. His name is Ramachandran, and his body count is huge. He's killed other cows. He's killed cows. He's killed other elephants. He's killed trainers. He stands 11 feet tall, and he was captured out of the wild, and he was imprisoned because they thought he would make their temple look really exciting and grand and impressive because he's so big. This elephant just kept chained in a yard. That, to me, is an unacceptable way to keep an elephant. Now, of all the dangerous things, I've worked with snakes, and I've worked, in all these crazy places with tigers. It turns out the herbivores, if anybody's ever been out west, like they'll tell you, yeah, there's grizzly bears, but watch out for the moose. They'll tell you, like a tiger, you're never going to see a tiger. Elephants, the thing is, because the elephants are constantly in conflict with the farmers, an elephant is starving, it goes and grabs some fruit, the other farmers shoot at them, they throw fire at them. So the elephants and the people have started this whole thing. And they warned me. They said that when you're in the forest, you have to be so careful that the elephants, if you get close to an elephant, it'll crush you. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So one day I go out, and I had a stream in front of me right here, and there was a herd of elephants on the other side, on your side of the stream. On my side, it went down about 12 feet. And so I said, okay, cool. So I was walking along the stream, watching these elephants, and I thought I was going to sit in a tree, and I was going to make notes, and I was like, I had this whole plan for the day. It was going to be great. And then I come, as I'm looking this way, I wasn't paying attention in front of me, and I come up to the rump of a full-grown male elephant. And he turns, and you could just see that I had, violated every law of the jungle. He was like, what are you doing? And without even stopping, this thing just goes, boom! Breaks a tree in half and starts trying to kill me. And he starts running through the jungle, literally trying to catch me under his feet. And as I'm running, weaving through trees, he's breaking through the trees. And in that moment, I learned the power of an elephant, because when I looked over my shoulder and I saw what he was just crashing through the forest, that ended with me jumping over the edge of the cliff, rolling down. And an elephant can't climb straight down, especially 12 feet. So he got to the edge of the cliff and did one of these, where he trying not to fall on me. If he had fell on me, we both would have died. This is what I looked like after. I figured if you survive getting almost killed by an elephant, you just take a selfie afterwards just to commemorate it. Now I have a complex. I have to prove to people that these things happen. But that was pretty close. That was a close call. But no, there's different levels of the relationships between humans and elephants in India, and this is tribal people in the forest. These boys had friends in the trees who were barefoot with machetes in their mouth, walking through the treetops 150 feet up, cutting fruit and letting it fall to the ground, and then this elephant would take it, put it on his back, and the boy would lash it on. And it's like they have this incredible relationship, and in the evenings they let the elephants go. And it's just an amazing thing that you very rarely see anymore. This was just passing water up after a long day. This is not my photo, but it's of a work elephant that died in North India, and sort of the ceremony and the funeral that they had for it after all those years of working together. Now, I always focus on the wildlife, of course, but one of the things I've seen as I work in these forests is what happens when you take forest people out of forests. You know, these Indian people, just like JJ and the Peruvians in the Amazon, these Indian people, these tribals know exactly what medicines are running through the veins of these trees. They know what leaves will cure what. They know how to track the animals. They know when things will happen. When you take them out of the forest, which they've been forcibly removed from the forest in many situations, the results are devastating. And so that's one of the things we're trying to make it so that tribal people are not victims of conservation, because that's happening more and more in India. Now, snakes have been a huge source of luck for me. Snakes opened up the Amazon. If I didn't have a relationship with snakes, I might not have gotten in so well with JJ. It was a snake that introduced me to my wife. We were both trying to catch a snake, and we met in the middle. So snakes have been really important for me, and this one was found in a village outside of Mangalore, and the snake rescuer called us, and I think there's some wind disturbance in this video might play, but the snake rescuer called us and told us that the villagers were going to kill this snake. And so we went there and we said, you know, what does he want? Was he trying to hunt other snakes? What brought him into the village? And the guy said, it's so hot, and he just kept saying, niru, 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 which is water. And this snake rescuer knew that if he gave this snake some water, that's all it wanted. I don't know if you've ever seen a snake drink, but you can just see him gulping down this water. And this is an 11-foot long, deadly venomous king cobra. He gave him a drink of water, we took a picture, and the snake went back. And usually what happens is, you know, people will kill a snake like this, but we're trying to work with the local people in India to educate them that these snakes are not trying to kill. You know, a king cobra is looking for smaller snakes to eat. It's certainly not looking for people to harm. Now, this doesn't show through very well here, but this is back to the Amazon. And so we're going to go from India, and we're going to go back to the Amazon for a second now. Through Tamandua, through the ecotourism company, through the work with JJ, we bring people from all over the world. And so as I've gone through all these jungles and all this thing, I'm very fascinated with how people perceive a forest, how people perceive wild animals. You know, most people, as you're walking on the street, if you see, you know, how many people here would pull over for a turtle crossing the street and help it? That's awesome. That's great. But so many people won't. And then there's those few sick people who will like swerve over to hit it. We know that they're out there. But working in the jungle, I get to bring people out into nature and share the jungle with them. And in 2012, I went to the jungle, and an Indian family came with their 2 kids. And it was a mom, dad, and they had their 2 kids, Anya and Isha. And the younger one, Isha, was just more connected to wildlife than I've ever seen. And the thing that made me realize it first was that in our kitchen, we have these screens, and so all the butterflies and moths go in there, and they die by the dozens. And so that, you know, when all of us were adults, we're doing things, we have important things to do, this kid could not handle that these butterflies were dying. So she'd go in there and take a cup and rescue them and bring them outside. And I would watch her do this work for a long time, rescuing all of these butterflies very diligently. So eventually I started helping her. And so we all started rescuing the butterflies, and she inspired that right away. And she also had this unstoppable nature. You know, one time we were up about 30 feet up in a tree, and we had the river below us, and she goes, I want to jump into the river. And I said, I don't know, you're 11 years old. I don't think you could jump 30 feet into a river. And she asked her parents, she shouted down, she said, can I do it? And when they said no, she started crying, like uncontrollably. She was like, I have to do this, I want to do it. And she goes, you can come with me or not. And she jumped, and I went with her, of course. But I'm the last person that's going to provide responsible adult supervision. I said, do it. But what I realized during this time was that this one kid had the ability to really influence everything around her. When she started rescuing butterflies, I started rescuing butterflies. The biggest thing was that the last day when we were going out from the jungle, we went to the logging town. We were trying to leave and go back to the city. And these poachers came through, and they had these ancient yellow-footed tortoises, these big old tortoises with their faces crammed into their shells. And of course, they were destined for the soup pot. And so little Isha looks at the turtles, and she looks at me, and right away she starts crying, and she goes, "What are you going to do?" And I'm callous as anything, man. I've seen so much animal death in the Amazon. I was like, you can't buy products from poachers. I was like, we just let it go. And she like stomped her foot, and she was like, those tortoises are going to die. How old are they? Are they 70 years old? She was just overwhelmed that no one would do something for those tortoises. And of course, all the blunted adults were just like distracted with plans or thinking about that you don't buy things from poachers. But watching her cry about it certainly had an effect on me. And what I did was I went up to the poachers and I said, "How much for the tortoises?" And he was like, "You don't even know how to cook tortoise. Why are you asking me?" And I said, "I'm not going to cook the tortoise, but I still want it." And he had no idea what I was talking about. He's like, "Why on earth would you want to pay me for a tortoise you're not going to cook?" But we bought the tortoise and we released it somewhere. Now that girl, Isha, went back to India after her time in the Amazon, and we kept in touch. And she'd email me about animals that she saw. And a few years later, when she was about 15 or 16, I was in the jungle about to leave on a 6-week expedition with JJ. And I get an email from Isha that says, "I have a question about a tigress." And so I open this email, and it's her. And if it was anybody else, I would have just junked it, but it was her. And she said, "There are tiger cubs abandoned in my grandparents' village. I'm going to save them. I need to know from you what to feed them and where to bring them." And I read these questions, and I went, oh my God, because I could just imagine that she was already going to do it. And that was the thing that brought all of the India work together for me. Because for so many years, I mean, I'd met the boys and their elephants, the snake charmers, the elephants. I mean, it's literally like Jungle Book with the girls carrying water on their head in the mornings. I mean, I had seen Kala's story and Ramachandran and all of these crazy events. And the story of Isha sort of brought that all together. And that's really what started to become The Girl and the Tiger. So when I started writing this book, now again, when we started studying anacondas, we didn't know that it was going to turn into this intense study about gold mining in the Amazon and the whole ecosystem. When I started following tigers, I didn't know that it was going to turn into a book. I didn't know that I'd make friends like this. This is a guy named Dharma. On this day, I was trying to write, I was trying to finish, get details, get things sharp, and he wanted my notebook. You see, he grabs it once or twice, and I tell him no. On the third time, I say, "Stop it," and I point at him. And just notice how upset he gets. He knows exactly what I'm saying. He puts his trunk in his mouth, and he cries. "Stop it." He gets so upset, and he walks away, because I wouldn't let him eat my notebook. Yeah, he got me back, though, later that day, because he saw me put bananas inside of a car. And here's the thing with an elephant. If you negotiate with an elephant, you'll lose every time. No, I'm being very, very serious. We're like, oh, we're the smartest animal. Well, I put these bananas in the truck, and he comes out of the jungle, and he's huge. He knows he's huge, and he knows that I'm small. And so I'm standing against the truck, and I'm going, "No, man, you can't have any bananas." And he keeps backing me up until my back's against the truck. And then he just turns his butt, and he makes it so either I move or I get crushed. So I moved, and he's looking at me, and he's clearly going, "I want bananas, man." And I was like, "You cannot have bananas." And I turn away, and I just hear this creak. And what he does is he just leans against the truck and puts it up on 2 wheels. And then he just kind of looks at me like, "Do you want this to turn, like, I'll just roll this over? Or you can give me the bananas, I don't care which one." And so I was like, and he understood. He understood this. And he went, "Okay, cool." And he came back, and the truck goes down. And then I took out the bananas, and I gave it to him, and he just had this grin on his face. Like, yeah. He knew exactly what he was doing, and there was no way for me to figure it out. But those are sort of the things that I wanted to communicate. Those are like, I said, this elephant, this guy Dharma, if he could ask for a book to be written, what would he want to say? What would he want to say to the humans? These animals can't hold a mic, they can't put on a suit, and they can't go to Parliament or Congress. So they really can't advocate for themselves. So I always think in terms of that, what would the animals want us to be talking about? What would they want to say if they could talk? And so spending time with guys like Dharma and with the tigers out there and with the forest, I've seen a lot of it firsthand. A lot of the things in The Girl and the Tiger are things that I've really experienced. This is, I want to show you guys real quick, just a quick, it's sort of a summary of some of the film clips that I've taken over the years, stuff I've shot on my own camera, and I stuck it together. Everybody keeps telling me this book would make such a good movie, and I tried to make what I thought the movie trailer would look like. Hopefully we get the sound good on this. Can we just do the lights for this? I don't know which one it is. You got this. There we go.
We all knew that they would say it was just a legend, like it was one of the old stories. But this happened in our time. You see out past the villages, there's still magic out there. In the last scraps of jungle, where the old ways still survive. It's the story that the animals asked me to tell. One that would have been lost if it wasn't for the memory of those of us who'd been there to see it for ourselves. They'd say a legend of stripes and fire that came to be known as the Girl and the Tiger.
You saw that elephant throwing the cars. He got sick of listening to the humans. It took me about 6 or 7 years before I saw my first wild tiger, and when I did, I didn't take a picture of it, and I don't really tell that story because that's between me and the tiger, but this is a picture that I found that looked almost like that moment, and that's the picture that became the front cover of the book. This, for the last tigers, the elephant herd, the wild creatures who made our world, I really believe that this is the book that those animals would want out there, that talks about their forest and what's happening to them, and that puts us inside of their mind. This is the Indian cover. We got Slash from Guns N' Roses to endorse us, which was great. Steve Winter from National Geographic. It's been an incredibly long journey to go from the jungles to publication, and so it's really exciting to be here talking to you about this tonight. And in closing, though, I just want to say that I could see everybody's faces as I was talking about the decline of wildlife and forests disappearing, and more as I tour around the country talking to people about this stuff, about the Amazon and about India and about tigers and about anacondas, they say, well, you know, is there any hope? Everyone wants to know, is there any hope? Because we just hear that everything is dying. And 3 stories. One is bald eagles. Just a few decades ago, we were losing our national bird. Bald eagles were going extinct from DDT. Humpback whales. The whaling industry brought humpback whales from about 130,000 down to about 7,000 or 8,000. We almost lost humpback whales. And then, of course, tigers, which in India, they've just doubled their tiger numbers. So tigers are actually coming back. Humpback whales are actually coming back. Bald eagles are back. So it's like this stuff, what this teaches us is that people have gotten together and defended species before. It works. All you need to do is stop people from destroying their habitat and actually killing them, and they'll be fine. And everyone keeps going, well, what do we do to protect the Amazon? Well, it's like, well, this isn't rocket science. We can send probes to Mars, and I can FaceTime with people in India. All we got to do to save the Amazon is stop cutting down trees. These things are really, really simple. But, you know, a lot of people, they see the work that I do and they say, I want to go to the jungle. And this week what I learned was that one of the most important things you can do is work right here. Because in Indonesia, we're losing forests so quickly. Orangutans, tigers, elephants, all that habitat is being destroyed for palm oil. It's in our shampoos, it's in our chips, and our cookies. And what they're doing is they're trying to make it so the companies can't sell products with palm oil. It has to be ensured that they're not destroying the rainforest. And that's happening here. That's happening in courtrooms. That's like cases. So what I'm trying to say, though, is that protecting wildlife, first of all, is very possible. And second of all, there's no one mold. You don't have to travel to the jungle. You don't have to be a biologist. You could make documentaries. People have changed the course of entire forests with documentaries. I'm trying to tell the story of these forests and do what I can. I mean, through the work that we do with Seminole and the study abroad, with JJ, with Jungle Keepers, the NGO that we have down there, we're actually protecting 30,000 acres of the Amazon right now. That's 30,000 acres where everything is safe, where no trees will be cut, where no animals will be hunted, where everything is clean. And so that's, to me, that's, you know, a lot of the stuff that I talked about tonight is about the decline and about how bad things are getting. But it's more important than ever to remember that this stuff can be changed. It's not too late. And that you guys, everybody sitting in this room, you have nature in your backyards and you have the power to protect things, even if it is on the other side of the world. And one of the best things about coming here tonight is that I know that for the last few years we've had Mary and Tarina and Seminole State coming down, and all the students who've been a part of the program, which literally, I mean, if I told JJ all these years ago that we would have study abroads coming, that we'd have kids from all over the world coming and like learning from them as they teach us how to make brooms and they show us their trails and they show us their food, they would have lost their minds. This is like a dream come true for them. So it's actually doing something to protect the forest and to empower the local people to not be gold miners and to better their lives. I have to stop now because I could go on for hours and hours. I have so many more stories that I want to tell you. Okay, take a quick drink break and then we're going to come right back and I'm going to start it over. No, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of announcements here. In a moment, we're going to have Paul do question and answer. Sorry, I'm not sure what the hand signal meant. In a moment, we're going to have Paul do question and answer. But before that, just want to remind you, if you have not purchased your copy of The Girl and the Tiger, the bookstore is selling copies out in the hallway. In a moment, Paul will also be doing a signing, so you get your book signed tonight. Also, I want to bring down Janina, the president of the Environmental Club. She has a special presentation to Paul. She wrote a poem and printed the poem on some special paper, and she raised money to give to Paul to help save rainforest land and to protect it. So we'd like to welcome down Janina to present the funds.
Thank you so much. So what I want to do is we'll use this to, what I think we should do, if you are okay with it, is that we should put this out towards camera traps that work and get them out in the jungle and show people some of the stuff that's being protected on the land that we're all working on. I think that'd be cool.
You're very awesome.
Then thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so if folks want to ask questions, there's microphones on either side of the room if you want to start lining up to ask questions. Again, I'll just remind you that after this, there's a reception with free food, yay! And you can get your book signed by Paul himself.
Just to remind you also that Janina's poem is for sale here in our lobby. 2 beautiful poems by Janina, and we are very proud of her. So please contribute, because whatever we sell from those poems will go to the cause. So we can still add more money to that pocket. Okay? Thank you.
And sorry, one more thing for those of you who are in the overflow room, if you'd like to come and ask questions, please come into this main room and we can have your questions get asked in here. Thank you. Can we thank Paul one more time for
Okay. Who's got questions? I can't teach you how to catch a snake.
I'm sorry, this is embarrassing. So,
Tell me.
the extinct species,
Yeah.
are they going up or going down?
The extinct ones would be the ones that are already gone. The endangered ones.
Oh, I'm sorry, the endangered.
The endangered ones are going. You mean, are the numbers of extinct species?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're losing more and more species because they keep doing housing developments everywhere. And all
And they're
this.
cutting down trees, and they're getting
Yeah.
rid of, and they're making roads, and
Yeah, and that's the thing that bothers me more than anything else.
they're also doing pollution in the lakes, which are also killing fish.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what we got to stop. We got one way in the back.
So the story you said about Isha,
Yeah.
did she save the tiger cubs?
No, in real life, the story played out a little differently than it does in the book. She didn't make it there, but
She tried.
she tried.
Saw
And
that.
that was man, even that was amazing. So.
Excuse me.
We have a little problem here in this area with the bears, and it seems like all they do is build. Any suggestions how we can, I've gone to some of the county meetings and stuff, it's not, the bears aren't harming anybody, but then they're trying to say that they're growing in population, but what it is, they're building housing.
Yeah.
Any
pushing them
suggestions
out.
how we can stop it?
I don't know. I really don't. I don't know how it works here. But I mean, again, like showing people, teaching people about bears, maybe what bears do. I know in upstate New York, I was just talking to someone who was complaining about the possums that she has in her house. And I was telling her that I read that possums can eat something like 3,000 ticks a day. They just walk around eating ticks from the forest. And also that they've proven now that in areas where there's foxes, there's less Lyme disease because they prey on mice all winter, which reduces the rodent population. So it's like explaining to people how these things are all tied together, how a lot of the wildlife can actually help the ecosystem protect us. That's where I usually go with it, but I really think that, I mean, we can't just keep developing everything.
No. And I want to thank you. My son had a fabulous time with you in Peru. Craig Crampton.
Oh, God, of course.
Yes.
I had a fabulous time with him, too.
So you managed to save 30,000 acres of
Yes.
land. How did you manage to do that?
Storytelling.
Storytelling?
Storytelling. One of the things I realized is that if I go to the jungle, when I started out, I used to go to the jungle and I used to feel like it was very, I don't know, I just felt like, taking pictures of everything. I felt like it was very touristy. I had this completely wrong image in my head. Now I'm the opposite. Now I try to document everything. Because when you go to the jungle and you have these experiences, coming back and telling people about anacondas, telling people about these giant trees that are going down, showing people pictures of the burning forest. The ability to tell that story here is what brought people down to the Amazon that had much bigger tools than I have. Actually, writing my first book, Mother of God, is really the thing that actually brought people down who said, we have the resources, kid, what do you want to do? And I said, we have to protect this river, and that's what we're working to do now. So this week we actually had the Peruvian Navy going into the forest to try and clear out invaders. I mean, now it's become serious. We have rangers. It's no joke. Whereas back in the old days, I had no shoes, and it was just me and JJ, like, trying to catch big snakes.
So how big is your team?
The team, it's always changing, but it's probably like 15, 20 people. But really, the thing is the ability to communicate this to people in images and reports and stories, whether it's writing or through the voice. For me, it's all been storytelling. That's what.
You're good at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't exactly have a question, but I have a comment. You said earlier you wished there would be animals in the government, and I feel like that's the problem, is that there are a lot of complete animals in the government, and that is what we need to try to fix. So,
I agree. One of the biggest things, along with voting with your wallet, along with being involved in local stuff, is that we have to stop putting people in office that don't understand biology and that don't have any regard for the environment And I was just talking to someone that's, again, this is they're not in the jungle trying to protect nature, they're in the courtrooms trying to protect nature, where they're trying to make it that if you dam a river, you have to pay reparations to everybody downriver. They're basically making it so it would be financially unreasonable to dam a river. Or if you spill oil, that's viewed as attempted murder to everyone, that all the fishermen and all the irrigation and everyone that depended on that ecosystem. So it's like we have to change the way we think about this stuff. Like we're just like, oh, it's a river. Yeah, it's a river that's keeping everyone there alive, you know, and contributing to the greater thing. So I think that, yeah, not letting those guys in office and changing the way we think legally about nature, I think, are two things that could have massive effects. I support your comment.
Would you say that the scariest moment in your life was falling off that cliff when the elephant was chasing you, or is there something completely worse that you've experienced before?
No, I felt awesome. That felt incredible. When you hit the water and you're alive and you thought you were going to die, I got all kinds of adrenaline and I was just like buzzing for the next week and my eyes were giant. It was great. I felt awesome. No, the worst moments are things where I've seen like severe animal suffering, or actually one time I watched, I don't know why I do this to myself. I went and I watched a river being dammed. Them blowing up this beautiful river and laying the concrete that was going to ruin it. Those are the worst moments of my life, when I actually feel hopeless about everything. Yeah, sorry to take that super dark, but yeah. It's when the world is dying, no. But usually the animal encounters aren't that bad, you know? I mean, that was, luckily, it was good.
Sorry, I have a question.
You don't have to be sorry. I want questions. If you didn't have questions, I would just be standing here. It's really awkward between me and all of you.
So I don't know if you are aware, or if most people are aware, here in Florida especially, we have an invasive species problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask, what would your suggestion be for about change in regards to whenever an invasive species is caught, they are euthanized?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that breaks my heart because they're still a living being and a creature. Yeah. And there has to be a better way to handle the problem without killing innocent creatures.
Yeah.
What would your advice be on going about that?
Do you want my hard answer or soft answer?
Either or.
Serve them in restaurants. I'm sorry, no, I honestly though, there's so many of these invasive species that have been brought around that for me personally, and you have Isha on your side for sure, you do, but for me on the other hand, you know, if you're talking about pythons, you know, you could give them as pets to people, but at this point there's so many pythons, what do you do with them? So I would want to utilize them in some way, maybe feed them to something else. Sorry? Yeah. It's complicated, but I've seen what invasive species like cane toads in Australia. I mean, they've devastated Australia. It's kind of. So I hear what you're saying, and I think it's noble.
I don't really even have a question, more like a comment. So like over the summer, I was in Phuket, and they have like a lot of elephant sanctuaries over there and stuff. So I went to one in particular where they actually had saved a lot of elephants from Asia, like India and stuff like that, and kind of gave them a better life. I was telling her like a lot of them were like tortured and stuff, and you can kind of see basically everything they went through, and they were kind of like, it was like awesome seeing them like have a better life, and also seeing that they were like using the elephants for like good and stuff, because over in Phuket they kind of like learned how to like make paper out of their poop and stuff, and like, I'm so serious, I actually have poop paper at home, so it was actually really cool. So I just kind of wanted to comment that, saying that, you know, it is great to see like people are saving these elephants from, you know, whatever they're going through over there, like poachers and stuff like that. So
I agree. Yeah, and like you going there, of course, probably supported them doing that work, and it's awesome that we can travel from here and support good projects like that. So yeah, 100%. I have no idea. Yes, that's true. You're the one that reached out. This woman right here, thank her, everybody. It was from Mother of God, right? Was it from Mother of God? Yeah. That's right.
There's been a lot of information in the news lately about the pollution in India. How do you think that's affecting the animals?
I think it's probably affecting them very similarly to how it affects us. I mean, you can actually see it on the leaves, like it's soot. So it affects everything over there. Honestly, when I go to India, sometimes I'll try and go for a run in the street, and you end up, like if you spray a cockroach with poison, like with the way they look, that's the way I feel sometimes when like these trucks drive by. It's bad. I mean, that's not my area of expertise, but I've seen it, and it's terrible.
Thank you.
I'm all the way up here. I don't know if you can see me. Sorry.
Hello.
But where I live, I don't live anywhere around Lake Mary. I live towards Winter Park, like the Chuliota area. And we have a lot of coyotes over there. And we're always told if we see one that somebody's going to come and pick them up. But I never see somebody come get them and relocate them. So what do they mean, like they're going to come pick them up? Because I'm not trying to be rude. I just don't know where they'll bring them. They're coyotes. I see like probably 10 a day when I drive home. I mean, my dog is part wolf, so we can't let him outside. So, I mean, like, I don't want my dog to like go after one. So, like, what would I do?
I don't know whether they're really picking them up and putting them somewhere else, but what I do know is that coyotes are one of the most persecuted animals on the planet. In the U.S.,
like they come and go all the time.
You're allowed to spotlight them, you're allowed to trap them, poison them, you're allowed to kill entire families of them. There's no hunting season. Across the U.S., you can pretty much hunt coyotes whenever you want, however you want, and in a lot of places there's still a bounty for it. We hate coyotes for some reason, and people are very, very scared of them.
I mean, they're really small if you look at them.
I know.
And then
they eat like mice and rabbits, so I don't know.
My friend Jeanette had a question. She just doesn't want to talk. Would you ever release your journals as another book?
Oh God, no. That'd be a very inappropriate book. No. Go ahead.
So I have a question. Like, I'm starting out as a freshman here, and I'm hoping to work with like conservation like you in the future. But I'm hoping to follow like a biology like major. Like, what steps should I take now to ensure that I have a successful career in conservation such as you?
I think your boots on the ground in the field work. There's the thing that's going to distinguish you. And again, this is just one person's opinion, but I was telling this story earlier today that somebody contacted me and he had the same question, but he wanted to be a shark scientist.
That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he wanted to go study great whites in Africa. And I told him, because he was trying for so long and not getting in, and even though he had the credentials, and I said, just go to the dock, go to the place where they do it, and carry their tanks for them, like help them untie the boats, whatever it is. Again, that's why I try to mention that the first time I tried to go to the Amazon, somebody told me no. The second time I tried to go to the Amazon, somebody told me no. I mean, it's very competitive out there, especially for the really fun jobs.
Yeah.
So you gotta do something. You have to make yourself valuable to the people that are doing the work that you want to do. And I think the best way to do that is to show up. That's the best first step.
All right, sweet. Thank you very much.
Of course.
So I'm writing a research paper right now on anti-venom. I've always had a passion for snakes, so I'm like really snake crazy, I guess. So basically, there's so much fear about snakes. What do you say to people like when you're like passionate about snakes? Because I mentioned snake one time and people are like, "Oh my God, she's insane!" Like, how do you? Like, because I watched Austin Stevens' Snake Master growing up, so I watched him like wrestle anaconda and photograph wild king cobras, and that's what made me fall in love with snakes. And whenever I talk about like snakes, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, I mean, I do my best to try and protect them, and when people tell me they're scared of snakes, I invite them to touch it, to hold a snake. Basically, I find a really friendly snake, and then I let them hold it, and I've converted so many people. I'm like a snake missionary.
Yeah.
Bringing people to the Church of Snake.
And what would you say would be like the most important, like your favorite part of like what you do?
Oh God. I mean, aside from actually relating to the animals and getting to protect the rainforest, it's definitely part of it is sharing it with other people. Because, I mean, being able to give people access to the jungle, being able to show people what an incredible planet we live on. I mean, I've kind of come to feed off of the wonder I see in other people. That's really important to me. Should we do one more?
Hi, I'm from the land of cane toads.
Oh yeah, I can hear it.
So I was just wondering, like, was there any language or cultural barriers that you faced when you went to these places? Like, it just sounds like you turned up and kind of shared your love and passion of snakes, but what about the language or?
Well, JJ, I mean, this story has so much luck in it. I mean, JJ speaks English and Spanish, so I slowly learned Spanish from him, and he could translate the rest. And of course, there was a lot of me getting lost and not being able to do things at the bank and everything because my Spanish was 0 when I started. And then in India, I had, my wife to translate and everything, so I've been very fortunate to have people taking care of me and let me sort of take my first steps with support until the point where I can do it on my own. So I didn't really run into too much of that. I've had tropical diseases and everything, but not too much cultural stuff.
Thank you.
One more? One more.
Hi, it's me again.
Hello.
Anyway.
We're back.
Anyway, so invasive species of the Everglades, of the Burmese python. I'm another snake fan, okay? I love snakes. I'm begging my mom to give me a corn snake or a Burmese python. Anyway, so I don't want the Burmese python to be killed, but they're invading the Everglades, so how do we fix that?
Oh, well, I mean, I think about it like this. For all the other animals that live there, that the Burmese pythons are hurting, we have to save those animals.
Yes,
right?
But I also don't want the Burmese python to die. So maybe, just maybe, there could be a rescue team that could go around and maybe find Burmese python and take them out and give them somewhere else.
I know a few
where
guys that
they
do that,
belong.
but then they take them home and they eat them.
Well, thank you for answering my second question.
At least I didn't lie. Thank you, guys.
Thank you again all for coming. Don't forget there's a reception. Please enjoy, and Paul will be signing books shortly if you'd like to do that. Bookstore is selling books if you'd like to buy one. Thank you.